Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so in the previous verse, Lord Rishabdev said that only when the knot in the heart, yada mano hridaya granti karmanubhaddo drida ashlateta. So only when it is loosened, then only it is possible for one to get mukti. Mukta param yati ati haya hetum. Then only can get liberated and attain the supreme abode. But then still there's always a risk by the practice of, so that is possible to some extent by the practice of jnana, but then as we saw there's always a risk. So the real path to get rid of the mithya ahankar is the practice of bhakti. So anyway, Vishwanath Thakur says that these verses from 10 to 13 are speaking about Jnana Mishra Bhakti. So some little bit mixture of Jnana is also there. But in any case, it's mainly the practice of bhakti. So how to practice bhakti by which one can actually get liberated from the false ego, that is what is being described in these 4 verses. So somebody read the translation.
O my sons, you should accept a highly elevated Paramahamsa, a spiritually advanced spiritual master. In this way, you should place your faith and love in me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You should detest sense gratification and tolerate duality of pleasure and pain, which are like seasonal changes of summer and winter. Try to realize the miserable condition of living entities who are miserable even in the higher planetary systems. Philosophically inquire about the truth. Then undergo all kinds of austerities and penances for the sake of devotional service. Give up the endeavor for sense gratification, sense enjoyment, and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. Listen to discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always associate with devotees. Chant about and glorify the Supreme Lord and look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. Give up enmity and subdue anger and lamentation. Abandon identifying the self with the body and the home and practice reading the revealed scriptures. Live in a secluded place and practice the process by which you can completely control your life air, mind, and senses. Have full faith in the revealed scriptures, the Vedic literatures, and always observe celibacy. Perform your prescribed duties and avoid unnecessary talks. Always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, acquire knowledge from the right source. Thus, practicing Bhakti Yoga, you will patiently and enthusiastically be elevated in knowledge and will be able to give up the false ego.
So as Prabhupada writes in the purport, in these 4 verses, Rishabdev tells his sons how they can be freed from the false identification arising from the false ego and material conditional life. One gradually becomes liberated by practicing as mentioned above. All these prescribed methods enable one to give up the material body, lingam vyapohet, that means the subtle body, subtle material body, and be situated in his original spiritual body. Okay, so that's how one can give up the false ego, the material subtle body, and be situated in the spiritual body. So all these are the various steps. So As Vishnu Thakur says, there are 25 steps, or 25 paths that are being mentioned over here, by which one can give up the influence of the subtle body, the false ego, and be situated in one's constitutional position. So it begins with Shri Guru Padashraya, as Rupa Goswami also says. Tad Vijnanatam Sa Gurumeva Bhigachet. And so when one engages in devotional service, naturally the attraction for personal comfort, for eating, sleeping, and dressing is reduced. By associating with the devotee, a spiritual standard is maintained. The word Mad Deva Sangat is very important. There are many so-called religions devoted to the worship of various demigods, but here good association means association with one who simply accepts Krishna as his worshipable deity. Another important item is Dvandva Titiksha. As long as one is situated in the material world, there must be pleasure and pain arising from the material body. But one has to tolerate. Tam Stitikshasma Bharata. And then detach from family, practice celibacy, observe brahmacharya. Another important word is Vijnana Virajita. Everything should be done very scientifically and consciously. One should be a realized soul. We were discussing this point yesterday. So it's not sufficient to have simply theoretical knowledge. So one must develop realization. So therefore, to develop that realization, one must do everything scientifically. Scientifically means what? Yes, as prescribed in the scriptures. And consciously, one must be conscious of what one is doing. In this way, one can give up the entanglement of material bondage. As Sri Madhvacharya points out, the sum and substance of these 4 shlokas is that one should refrain from acting out of a desire for sense gratification and should instead always engage in the Lord's loving service. In other words, Bhakti Yoga is the acknowledged path of liberation. Sri Madhvacharya quotes from the Adhyatma, Atmano vihitam karma varjayatvanya karmanaha kamasya cha parityago niriheti ahur uttamaha. One should perform activities only for the benefit of the soul. Any other activity should be given up. When a person is situated in this way, he is said to be desireless. Actually, living entity cannot be totally desireless, but when he desires the benefit of the soul and nothing else, he is said to be desireless. Spiritual knowledge is Jnana Vijnana Samanvitam. When one is fully equipped with Jnana and Vijnana, he is perfect. Jnana means that one understands the Supreme Personality of God, Vishnu, to be the Supreme Being. Vijnana refers to the activities that liberate one from the ignorance of material existence. Okay. And then it's quoting Bhagavatam 2.9.31. Jnana paramaguhyam me yad vijnana samanvitam. And then Janma karma cha me devi. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, at another place, there's a wonderful section where very similar points are made. How to get free from sense gratification, come to the level of prema. So same thing, right? Prema means false ego is finished. Which is the other section? Okay, that is one section. That is one section. Okay, that is also one section. First canto, second chapter from verses 16 to 21. That is also there. But more specifically, Seven, 12. Narad Muni teachings to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Okay, but this is a very wonderful section which has already been covered in the 4th canto. This is teachings of Sanat Kumar to Prithu Maharaj. So this is fourth canto. Let's see. (22nd chapter), and the verse is hmm. 21st verse. Fourth canto, 22nd chapter, 21st verse. It has been conclusively decided in the scriptures, after due consideration, that the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from the bodily concept of life, an increased and steadfast attachment for the Supreme Lord who is transcendental beyond the modes of material nature. This is the ultimate goal for human society. Shastreshva iyan eva sunishito ninam kshemasya. Kshemasya means the ultimate benefit. Sadriyag vimrisheshu, after due deliberation. Hetu asanga atma vyatirikta atmani drida ratir brahmani nirgune chaya. So asanga, detachment from atma vyatirikta, that means anything that's separate from atma. And the atmani drida ratir brahmani, so developing a firm attachment to the Supreme Brahman, who is Nirgun. So that is the ultimate benefit, kshemaya, for all human beings, for all human beings. And Prabhupada, in the purport, he summarizes this as the ultimate goal of life is described in Bhagavad Gita. Param drishva nivartate. This is the summary of that. So the ultimate goal is param drishva nivartate, developing the higher taste. That is the goal of human life. When one finds out the supreme goal of life, he naturally becomes detached from bodily concept. So if one becomes attached to the Supreme, naturally the detachment from the bodily concept will take place. So now, how to develop that increased attachment to the Supreme and detachment from matter? And then towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada is saying, quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prema Pumarto Mahan. Without increasing the love of Godhead, one cannot achieve the perfectional stage of the transcendental position. And you'll find points very similar to what Lord Rishabdev has said. Very similar points. Beginning from the next verse, 4:22-22. So, Shraddhaya Bhagavad Dharmacharyaya Jigyasayadhyatmika Yoga Nishtaya Yogeshwaropasanaya cha Nityam Punya Shrava Kataya Punyaya cha. Somebody can read?
Attachment for the Supreme can increase by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying Bhakti Yoga in life, worshipping the Yogeshwar, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves.
Yes, so attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service. Sa Shraddhaya Bhagavad Dharma. So one has to practice Bhagavad Dharma. How? Shraddhaya, with faith and conviction. Charyaya, Charya means discussion. So this is what we are doing here, discussion. Discussion about the Supreme Lord. Jignasaya, inquiry. Yoga Nishtaya, by conviction and spiritual understanding. Yogeshwara Upasanaya. So Yogeshwara is the Supreme Lord. Upasanaya means worship. Nityam Punyashrava Kataya. So regularly, Nityam, hearing, Punyashrava Kataya, and by discussion. Okay, so twice the word discussion has come in this verse. But interestingly, Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he describes Yogeshwara Upasanaya as, you see the purport. In this verse, Yogeshwara Upasana means to render service to a pure devotee. Even though in the word to word, he says Yogeshwar means Supreme Lord, Upasana means worship of the Supreme Lord. But in the purport, Prabhupada is saying, Yogeshwara Upasana means to render service to a pure devotee. That's what we were discussing. So rendering service to the pure devotee is as good as rendering service to the Supreme Lord. Because that's our process. Yasya prasadat bhagavad prasad. So one can never approach the Supreme Lord directly. The service has to go through the pure devotee. That is why Prabhupada is explaining like this. Thus Narottam Das Thakur says, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva, Nistar Paichikama. And the same thing Rishabdev is also saying here. What Rishabdev is saying, the first thing here, what is the first thing he's saying here? Yes. So if you see the Sanskrit, what is the first thing? Hamse Gurau. Hamse Gurau. Mai Bhaktya. So I accept a Paramahamsa as Guru. That is the first thing what Rishabdev is saying. And the same thing here also. Yogeshwara Upasanaya. So that is how all the Shastras say the same thing. And then Srila Prabhupada is quoting from Prahlad Maharaj. Neishamatista vadurukramangrim sprashatyanartha pagamo yadartaha mahiyasam padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam navrinita yabat. One should take shelter of pure devotee who has nothing to do with this material world but is simply engaged in devotional service. By serving him only, one can transcend the qualitative material condition. In this verse it is recommended, Yogeshwara Upasanaya, that one serve the lotus feet of the topmost yogi or the devotee. So what does it mean to serve? To serve the topmost devotee means to hear from him about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To serve the topmost devotee means to hear from him about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the best service one can do. The best service is to hear. And then of course, hearing does not mean simply to hear and forget it. To hear means to apply. That is actual hearing. So one does not apply, what is the use of hearing? So one has to hear and then apply. Then the hearing is actually complete. To hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the mouth of a pure devotee is to acquire a pious life. And then he's quoting Yesham Tadam. And then again the same thing. For work in devotional service, the first item is Adav Guru Ashrayam. So you see the same thing. What Rishabdev is saying, the same thing Sanat Kumar is also saying. The conclusion is that to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master and learn from him the methods of devotional service and hear from him about the transcendental message and glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this way, one has to increase his conviction about devotional service. Then it will be very easy to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then in the next few verses, he's speaking about other important items. The next verse, Arthendriya Rama Sagoshcha Atrishnaya Tatsammatanam Aparigrahena Cha Viviktarucha Paritosha Atmani Vina Hare Gunapiyusha Panat. Padho.
One has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. One can be thus elevated by being disgusted with the taste of sense enjoyment, for sense enjoyment.
Yes. So here this point is about association. So giving up the association of materialistic people and associating with devotees and hearing Harikatha. And you see in the instructions of Rishabdev, you find the same thing. Mat kataya cha nityam mad deva sangat guna kirtanat me. So same thing. Mat kataya, hearing topics about me. Nityam, always. Mad deva sangat, association with my devotees. Guna kirtanat. So same thing. So here in this purport, Prabhupada says, simple negation or giving up the company of materialistic persons will not do. We must have engagements. Okay, so simply giving up will not do. Sometimes it is found that a person interested in spiritual advancement gives up the company of material society and goes to a secluded place as recommended for the yogis especially, but that also will not help a person in spiritual advancement, for in many instances such yogis also fall down. As far as the jnanis are concerned, generally they fall down without taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Okay, so the beginning of devotional service is to hear about the glories of the Supreme Personality of God. That's recommended in this verse. Vina harer guna piyusha panat. One must drink the nectar of the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this means that one must be always engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. It's a prime method for advancing in spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also recommends this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, so this is about the Bhakti Lata Bij that he's speaking about. So that is the watering. The purport is that one cannot live outside the society of devotees. One must live in the association of devotees where there's constant chanting and hearing of the glories of the Lord. Okay, so it's good at least sometime, for a long time, doing some chanting and hearing. Prabhupada is saying the Krishna consciousness movement is started for this purpose, so that hundreds of ISKCON centers may give people a chance to hear and chant, to accept the spiritual master, and to disassociate themselves from persons who are materially interested. So Prabhupada is saying the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is three things. What? Give people chance to hear and chant, accept spiritual master, and disassociate from persons who are materially interested. So three purposes for ISKCON. Of course, Prabhupada is given 7 purposes. But of course, within the 7 purposes, actually all these are covered. For in this way, one can make solid advancement in going back home, back to Godhead. And then in the next verse, some more items he's saying. Ahimsaya paramahamsya charyaya smritya mukunda charitagrasidhuna yame rakame niyameshapya nindaya nirihaya dvandva titikshaya cha. Read.
A candidate for spiritual advancement must be non-violent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulative principles without material desires, and while following the regulative principles, should not blaspheme others. A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by dualities of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate them.
And you see in Rishabdev's teachings also, you find the same thing. Sat Shraddhaya Brahmacharyena Yamena Vacham Sarvatra Madbhava. And in fact, you'll find the same word exactly the same word you will see, Dvandva Titikshaya. In Rishabdev's teachings also you'll find Dvandva titikshaya. And here also what is there? Dvandva titikshaya. You see, exactly the same thing. So similar teachings. So these are all the ways by which one can develop love, become free from the bodily misconception, become free from the false ego. So these are the steps that are required. So anyway, you all can read this very nice purport. Okay, one part of this purport we'll read, important part. So Prabhupada writes here, I'm reading from this 4:22-24. The word smritya is very important in spiritual life. Smritya means remembering Krishna always. Life should be molded in such a way that one cannot remain alone without thinking of Krishna. We should live in Krishna, so that while eating, sleeping, walking, and working, we remain only in Krishna. Even while sleeping. Of course, in his lecture, Srila Prabhupada explains how is it possible, even while sleeping? While sleeping, you read Krishna book? Okay. Correct. So Srila Prabhupada gives his experience of one of his father's friend who had a cloth business. So throughout the day he would be selling cloth and quoting prices of cloth. So at night also in his sleep he would be quoting prices of cloth. Prabhupada gives this example. So similarly, if throughout the day one is Krishna conscious, then at night also when one is sleeping, one is likely to be Krishna conscious. Because the day's activities influence the nights. So that is how even while sleeping. Our Krishna Consciousness Society recommends that we arrange our living so that we can remember Krishna. In our ISKCON society, the devotees, while engaged in making spiritual sky incense, are also hearing about the glories of Krishna or his devotees. That means while doing service also, one should try to hear. The Shastra recommends Smartavya Satam Vishnu. Lord Vishnu should be remembered always, constantly. Vismartavyo na jatuchit. Vishnu should never be forgotten. That is the spiritual way of life. Smartya. This remembrance of the Lord can be continued if we hear about him constantly. So the more we hear, the more we can remember. It is therefore recommended in this verse, Mukunda Charita Griya Sidhuna. Sidhu means nectar. To hear about Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or similar authentic literature is to live in Krishna consciousness. Such concentration in Krishna consciousness, note this point, such concentration in Krishna consciousness can be achieved by persons who are strictly following the rules and regulative principles. We have recommended in our Krishna consciousness movement that a devotee chant 16 rounds on beads. Please note that. On beads daily. Prabhupada knew that in the future people would not chant on beads. Therefore, Prabhupada has specifically written here, on beads daily. And follow the regulative principles. That will help the devotee be fixed in his spiritual advancement in life. Okay, and then simple living, simple, plain living, high thinking, recommended for devotee. He should accept only so much as he needs to keep the material body fit for the execution of devotional service. He should not eat or sleep more than is required. Simply eating for living and not living for eating. So one should live to eat or eat to live? And sleeping only 6 to 7 hours a day are principles to be followed by devotees. As long as the body is there, it is subjected to the influence of climatic changes, disease, natural disturbances, the threefold miseries of material existence. We cannot avoid them. We were discussing these points yesterday also. We cannot avoid them. Sometimes we receive letters from neophyte devotees questioning why they have fallen sick, although pursuing Krishna consciousness. They should learn from this verse that they have to become tolerant, dvandva titikshaya. This is the world of duality. One should not think that because he has fallen sick, he has fallen from Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness can continue without impediment from any material opposition. Lord Shri Krishna therefore advises in Bhagavad Gita, Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. And then the next verse he says, Harer muhustat parakarna pura guna bidhanena vijrimbhamanaya bhaktya hi asanga sadasatya anatmani syan nirgune brahmani chanjasarati.
The devotee should gradually increase the culture of devotional service by constant hearing of the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These pastimes are like ornamental decoration on the ears of devotees. By rendering devotional service and transcending the material qualities, one can easily be fixed in transcendence in the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay, so here also is emphasizing on constant hearing. That is the actual decoration on the ears of the devotee. So Prabhupada writes, we can increase our propensity for devotional service by hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from realized souls. The more we hear from realized souls, the more we make advancement in our devotional life. This point we have discussed yesterday. From whom to hear? So, realized souls. The more we advance in devotional life, the more we become detached from material worlds. The more we become detached from the material world, as advised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the more we increase in attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee who actually wants to make progress in devotional service and go back home back to Godhead must lose interest in sense enjoyment and associating with persons who are after money and sense gratification. And then he's quoting Nishkinchanasya Bhagavad Bhajanonmukas. Param param jigamisho bhavasagras. Right, and the last verse in this connection. Yada ratir brahmani naishtiki puman acharyavan jnana viraga ramhasa dahatya aviryam hridayam jiva kosham panchatmakam yonimivotitogni.
Upon becoming fixed in his attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the spiritual master and by awakening knowledge and detachment, the living entity situated within the heart of the body and covered by the five elements burns up his material surroundings exactly as fire arising from wood burns the wood itself.
Right, so this is how the material body, both the gross and the subtle, are destroyed by the practice of devotional service. When one becomes fixed, naishtiki, yada rati brahmani naishtiki. So when one becomes fixed in the devotional service to the Supreme Brahman, and one develops how? Acharyavan. Acharyavan. So by surrendering to the Acharya, then one develops Jnana Viraga. So then that is how one gets freed from these bodily designations. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, the individual soul is liberated when it comes out of the material heart or cleanses the heart to make it spiritualized. The example given here is very appropriate. Yonim ivotito agni. Agni of fire comes out of the wood, and by it the wood is completely destroyed. Similarly, when a living entity increases his attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is to be considered like fire. A blazing fire is visible by its exhibition of heat and light. Similarly, when the living entity within the heart becomes enlightened with full spiritual knowledge and detached from the material world, he burns up his material covering of the five elements earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and becomes free from the five kinds of material attachments, namely ignorance, false egoism, attachment to the material world, envy, and absorption of material consciousness. You know these five, right? Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesh. Right? So these are the five kinds of material attachments. Therefore, panchatmakam, as mentioned in this verse, refers to either the five elements or the five coverings of material contamination, refers to either of them. So when these are all burnt, so when all the false ego, ignorance, all these are burnt into ashes by the blazing fire of knowledge and attachment, one is firmly fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and advances one's attraction for Krishna by the spiritual master's instructions, the five coverings of the living entity cannot be uncovered from the material heart. Okay, so the basic process is to take shelter of the bona fide spiritual master and follow his instructions. The living entity is centered within the heart, and to take him away from the heart is to liberate him. This is the process. So this is the process of liberation that has been mentioned. And the same thing Lord Rishabhdev also has spoken. One must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, and by his instruction increase one's knowledge in devotional service, become detached from the material world, and thus become liberated. An advanced devotee, therefore, does not live within the material body, but within a spiritual body, just as a dry coconut lives detached from the coconut husk, even though within the husk. The pure devotee's body is therefore called Chinmay Sharir, spiritualized body. In other words, a devotee's body is not connected with material activities, and as such, a devotee is always liberated. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. And is quoting Ihaya Saharir Dasya Karmanamana Sagira Nikilasa Privastasu Jivan Muktasu. So, this is how one can come to the liberated platform. Right? So, what Sanat Kumar has spoken to Prithu Maharaj, the same thing Lord Rishabhdev also is speaking to his sons. And this is how one can become liberated, free from the false ego, and that is how one can give up the bodily misconception. Hmm? I mean, basically, yes, so that's the same thing what Lord Rishabhdev is also saying. So basically, one can. So basically, the same thing, no? Getting free from the false ego. That is what Rishabhdev is also speaking about. Same thing, see. Yogena dhriti udyama sattva yukta lingam vyapohet. I think so the same word has come, no? Lingam vyapohet. And something similar came there also. So lingam vyapohet, that is the meaning of giving up the material bondage or the subtle body, lingam. So the same thing. That's what there also Sanat Kumar is saying, that the devotional service acts like fire. And that's how the gross body, subtle body, they are burnt up. Of course, they still remain, but the devotee becomes detached from the gross body and the subtle body. So same thing. Lingam vyapohet kushalaha aham akyam. Aham akyam. This is the false ego, false identification of the material worlds. One can give it up. So it's very similar. Okay, so now let's proceed ahead. So in any case, before proceeding ahead, just to know what should be the speed of our discussions. So I just want to know whether you have some time tomorrow, or tomorrow it's not possible to have any class. No, Monday I have to leave. So I don't have time. No. So Monday we have scheduled 10 to 2. That is what we have scheduled. So tomorrow, is it possible to have any class or no? No, tomorrow, as far as I am concerned, I am available. Say 2 hours at least. Suggest some time. Suggest some 2 or 3 choices, then we'll go by majority. Eight to 10. सुबह सुबह या रात को? Oh really? Halls are not available, no? Oh, like that. अच्छा अच्छा। वो तो मुश्किल होगा सबको जाने के लिए। हाँ, Nimanita Prabhu, what do you suggest? Not available. Huh? कुछ भी अवेलेबल नहीं होता है कल? वो आश्रम में है ना आपका वो बड़ा रूम? Oh, अच्छा अच्छा। No, I mean, if it's not possible, not possible. We'll adjust. But I just want to know. So accordingly, we have to adjust. Okay, fine. So somebody can settle that. We'll proceed ahead. हाँ, मुझे कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं। I'm okay with anything. Okay, so something will be available. Okay, ठीक है. So 11 to 1. हाँ वो कर देंगे. हाँ ठीक है. जो टाइमिंग फिक्स किया वो बस उतना ही. ठीक है ना. ओके ठीक है. 11 to 1 चलेगा. ठीक है. Okay, so that gives some clarity as to what pace we should go. So, okay, Hare Krishna. Okay, let's continue. 14th verse. Karmashayam hridaya granthi bandham avidyaya saditam apramattah anena yogena yatopadesham sanyagvyapohyo parameta yogat.
As I have advised you, my dear sons, you should act accordingly. Be very careful. By these means, you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for fruitive activity, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means, that is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself.
So here, Lord Rishabhdev is telling his sons that karmashayam. So we were discussing that was by Sanat Kumar also. Karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. So here also, karmashayam hridaya granthi. So this is the basic hridaya granthi, the karmashayam, the desire for fruitive activities. And the root cause of that is avidyaya, because of ignorance. So he's saying very carefully, apramatta, very carefully, without illusion, follow this advice. Yatha upadesham, as I've advised you. And then towards the end he says that vyapohya uparameta yogat. So one should desist from even the practice of yoga, that is the means of liberation. As in the translation, Srila Prabhupada says, for further advancement, you should also give up the means. That is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. And Prabhupada has explained the purport. The process of liberation is Brahma Jigyasa, the search for the absolute truth. Generally, Brahma Jigyasa is called Neti Neti, the process by which one analyzes existence to search out the absolute truth. This method continues as long as one is not situated in his spiritual life. Spiritual life is Brahmabhuta, the self-realized state. So this is the process of Gyan. So Neti Neti process is the process of Gyan, the process of speculation. By the process of speculation, one tries to understand the absolute truth. So therefore, by this process of speculation, one may come to the understanding that I am not body, I am spirit soul. So this is the process of Gyan. But when one actually comes to that realization that I am spirit soul, then one has to give up the speculative process and then surrender to the Supreme Lord. Correct? So that is the meaning of not being attached to the process of liberation itself. The process of liberation has been described here as the speculative process. So once one understands I am spirit soul, is that sufficient? Is that sufficient? No, it is not sufficient. Then one has to realize that, what? Yes, I am servant of Krishna. And for that one has to surrender. And surrender means giving up the speculative process. Correct? So one has to give up the speculative process and surrender to the Supreme Lord. So that is what he is telling over here. So one should give up that practice of speculation, and then only it is possible for one to come to the platform of bhakti. And therefore, Prabhupada is quoting Brahmbhuta Prasannatmana Shochatina Kankshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. So when one comes to the Brahmbhuta platform means realizing I am spirit soul, not this body. That's the Brahmbhuta platform. So when one comes to the Brahmbhuta platform, then at that point one has to give up the speculative process by which one has come to the Brahmbhuta platform. And then one can come to the platform of bhakti. And therefore, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada writes, the idea is to enter into the para bhakti, the transcendental devotional service of the Supreme Lord. To attain this, one must analyze one's existence. But when one is actually engaged in devotional service, he should not bother seeking out knowledge. By simply engaging in devotional service undeviatingly, one will always remain in the liberated condition. Mam cha vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahmbhuyaya kalpate. So after coming to the practice of bhakti, if one still continues speculation, then what it will become? Yes, that will become Jnana Mishra Bhakti. That will be a contamination in the practice of bhakti. So therefore, when one comes to bhakti, then one has to give up speculation to understand the absolute truth. So then one has to simply follow. At that time, no speculation to try to understand the absolute truth. At that time, simply obtain knowledge as coming in parampara and follow that. That is the meaning of avyabhicharini bhakti, no contamination. The unflinching execution of devotional service is in itself Brahmabhuta. As far as devotees are concerned, there is no separate process to come to the Brahmabhuta platform. By the practice of devotional service itself, one comes to the Brahmabhuta platform. For the Jnanis, they practice the process of Jnana, that is a speculative process, by which they come to that realization that I am not body, I am spirit, soul. Then they come to the Brahmabhuta platform. Then after coming to the Brahmabhuta platform, then if they get the association of devotee, they take to the process of devotional service, and that is how they make progress. Right? But as far as devotional service is concerned, there is no separate process to come to the Brahmabhuta platform. The practice of devotional service itself will lead one to the Brahmabhuta platform or the liberated platform. Correct? So in the practice of bhakti, which stage is the liberated platform? In the 9 steps of bhakti. Yes, the bhava stage. So the bhava stage is the liberated platform when one becomes free from even sattva-gun. Because on the stage of bhava, what happens? Shuddha sattva begins to show its influence. So that is the liberated platform for a devotee on the devotional path. But for the jnanis, then they have to first come to the liberated platform, and then from there they can get bhakti. Is this point clear? The difference between the path of jnana and bhakti. No. The way to come to bhava platform can be 2. Either through Vedi sadhana or through Raganuga sadhana. But bhava is bhavana. Once one comes to the bhava platform, that is a liberated platform. One may come through either the Vedi sadhana platform or the Raganuga platform. But once one comes to the bhava platform, then there is influence of Shuddha Sattva. So that's how one becomes free from even the influence of Sattva Gun. So therefore that is the liberated platform. Okay? So another important feature in this connection is Anena Yogena Yathopadesham. The instructions received from the spiritual master must be followed immediately. One should not deviate from or surpass the instructions of the spiritual master. One should not be simply intent on consulting books, but should simultaneously execute the spiritual master's order, yathopadesham. Okay, so Prabhupada is giving some important instructions for us. One should not deviate from or surpass the instructions of the spiritual master. What is the difference between deviate and surpass?
Deviate is totally against
Hmm. Hmm. Acha, surpass means postponing. Ah. Yes, surpass means to jump over. So Srila Prabhupada in his lectures he says one should not jump over the immediate acharya. So therefore, sometimes devotees also sometimes they tend to go to previous acharya's instructions, surpassing Srila Prabhupada's instructions. That is not allowed. So so just like one cannot, as Srila Prabhupada would say so on, one cannot directly say, okay, Haridas Thakur used to chant 3 lakh names, so I'll also chant. No, not allowed. Huh? So, or we find severe austerities being done by Raghunath Das Goswami. Can we follow that? Srila Prabhupada gave warnings in his lectures. You can't imitate, yes, you can't imitate these great acharyas in these austerities. You can't survive. So, therefore, one cannot directly jump over to the previous acharya's instructions. So, one needs to follow, one has to go through the immediate acharya. One senior devotee very nicely, so when he was asked this question, I don't know if I mentioned it previously, but in case. So when he was asked this question as to what should be our attitude towards reading the books of the previous acharyas. So the senior devotee made a very nice point. So he said there's no problem in reading, but the words of the previous acharyas must be seen through the lens of Srila Prabhupada. Very nice point. The words of the previous acharyas must be seen through the lens of Srila Prabhupada. That's what I wanted to ask. What do you think? Any thoughts? Huh? Okay. Bolo.
Different acharyas give teaching that particular time. So Prabhupada has given one particular correspondence. They may have given much more instructions for different instructions, different instances. Like when Rajiv Goswami is to present his more criticizing the Rajya and all those things. Sita Swami is more critical Mayavad. But little differences are there. Prabhupada has given much more applicable for a child, still not following it. So what basis is there? Accordingly distribute.
Right, so good point. Okay, so according to time, place, circumstances, different acharyas may have given different emphasis, but we have to see what our acharya has emphasized. Okay, that's a good point.
Prabhuji, one example that I heard from one devotee, that Srila Prabhupada gave more emphasis on preaching.
Correct.
So previous acharya that not given, because some point is there. And another also is that some devotee says that about impersonalism also, because Prabhupada condemns so much to impersonalism, but previous acharya they not found.
Yeah, so some differences may be there like that. So just like Srila Prabhupada has written in the purport to the 5th verse of the Nectar of Instruction, you can see that. Srila Prabhupada has written, according to our spiritual master Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, anyone who does not chant 64 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra daily is considered to be fallen. But that may be true. Prabhupada is saying, yes, so we are fallen, but at the same time, we have the grace of the Patit Pavan Avatar, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, we recommend that devotees chant at least a minimum of 16 rounds. You found it? You read exactly. Mike, the other way up.
That unless one chants at least 64 rounds of japa, 100,000 names, he is considered fallen, patita. According to his calculation, practically every one of us is fallen. But because we are trying to serve the Supreme Lord with all seriousness and without duplicity, we can expect the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is famous as Pati Tapavana, the deliverer of the fallen.
Right, so therefore, Srila Prabhupada made that adjustment. Okay, Srila Prabhupada made the adjustment, taking into consideration the present situation. And so we see that how, because Srila Prabhupada made that adjustment, then we have some hope now. Correct. And practically speaking, we are actually seeing that how even 16 rounds is becoming difficult for so many devotees, especially Grihastha devotees. Even 16 rounds is becoming so challenging. So many Grihastha devotees, they chant while traveling and driving and so many things. Correct? So that's how Srila Prabhupada made those adjustments, time, place, circumstances. Therefore, what it means is the principle remains the same. So what the previous Acharya has given, the previous Acharyas are Goswamis, they have all given the principle of Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Natibi. That is the principle which the Goswamis have given, which the previous Acharyas have given. Seeing that through the lens of the present Acharya means the same principle how our Acharya has applied. That is the meaning of seeing what the previous Acharyas have given through the lens of Srila Prabhupada. How Srila Prabhupada has taken the same principles given by the previous Acharyas and put it into practice in the current day situation. That is the point. And so the same, so like that, the emphasis on preaching. So yes, all the previous Acharyas, they also told about preaching, but then Srila Prabhupada had his a little special emphasis on preaching, especially to the scientific class and the educated class and all these types of people. So and we find also in Srila Prabhupada's purports. So just now we read Srila Prabhupada's purports, right? We just now read Srila Prabhupada's purport. Srila Prabhupada is specifically writing why he has started ISKCON. Correct? So these are specific instructions which Srila Prabhupada, in the morning also we were reading Srila Prabhupada's instructions, especially for, yes, ISKCON managers, ISKCON preachers, Srila Prabhupada has given instruction. The principles are the same. The principles are the same as given by the previous Acharyas. As you can see, Srila Prabhupada in those purports we read in the morning is quoting what the previous Acharyas have given about Yukta Vairagya, Falgu Vairagya, or Atyara Prayasasya. He's quoting all these instructions of the previous Acharyas. But how to apply them in the present day life, Srila Prabhupada has given his own instructions for ISKCON devotees. That is the meaning of seeing the teachings of the previous Acharyas through the light of Srila Prabhupada. Is this point clear? So therefore, this is the meaning of not deviating and not surpassing. So deviating means totally going off track, totally concocted ideas and concocted things. And surpassing means jumping over the immediate Acharya and trying to follow something which the previous Acharyas have given without consulting the current Acharyas. So both of them are condemned. So one cannot deviate also and one cannot surpass also. Both are condemned. Boliye. Okay. So I understand what you're going to say now. So once this a similar question, and maybe for the benefit of everyone, you speak in the mic.
Prabhuji, just like we are mentioning that don't surpass the current acharya. So now Prabhupada is physically not here. So current acharya is precedent means.
Okay, so
precedence of-
okay, the Diksha Gurus in the current
So
day.
the this surpassing principle also applicable same for this acharya also.
Okay, fine. So as far as practical instructions are concerned, practical instructions for every disciple, the disciple definitely needs to follow the instructions of his own Diksha Guru, of his own authorities. There's no doubt about that. So that point is clear that so a certain Diksha Guru may have some specific instructions for the disciple regarding his services, regarding his practices. So that definitely should be followed. Having said that, at the same time, in general, specific instructions could be there for disciples, but in general, all Shiksha Gurus and Diksha Gurus within ISKCON need to follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Correct? So, like some instructions are common for everyone. Chanting 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, following the 4 regulative principles, or the morning program and other things what Srila Prabhupada is given, they're common. And all Shiksha Gurus, Diksha Gurus need to follow that. There cannot be any change as far as those things are concerned. So, therefore, nobody else can say that one cannot surpass Srila Prabhupada's instructions as far as some common instructions are concerned, which Srila Prabhupada is given. Once a devotee asked His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj this question. So he said, what if in the future some devotee, some acharya comes who is very powerful, very empowered, and is transforming the lives of many people. So, will he become the next acharya of the society? And Bhakti Charu Maharaj gave a very precise and short answer. Maharaj said, he may be very powerful and very charismatic and everything, but he will simply remain at the feet of Srila Prabhupada. That's all. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada's position as the founder Acharya of ISKCON will remain for the next 10,000 years. And that is why Srila Prabhupada himself, in his manifest presence, wanted to establish that very strongly. You may have heard some of those pastimes. One of that pastime took place right here in Juhu. So again told by His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So when Srila Prabhupada was here, sometime in 1977, Prabhupada was here during March, April of 1977. And there was one pamphlet or flyer, something like that, which was printed, and that did not have founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada called the concerned devotee who got that printed, and he chastised him so heavily and so heavily and so heavily. And Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj was there, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj was wondering why, for such a small mistake, apparently small mistake, Srila Prabhupada is chastising the devotee so heavily. So Maharaj is relating this pastime maybe about 45, 50 years later. And then Maharaj says, now I understand the importance. Because if Srila Prabhupada would not have given that emphasis that time, we don't know what would have happened to the society today. Most probably it would be the same thing as the Gaudiya Maths. But because Srila Prabhupada gave that heavy emphasis, this was one pastime, there was another pastime also which happened. Similar pastime. Yes. Yes, this is told by Shrutakirti Prabhu when the ISKCON press was shifted from Boston to Los Angeles. And so after it shifted to Los Angeles, then it became the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And then, so Rameshwar Prabhu was in charge at that time. And so there was this beautiful buildings of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, all the printing presses, all advanced technology and all that. Very wonderful. And so Srila Prabhupada came there, and so Rameshwar Prabhu is, and the devotees are taking Srila Prabhupada on the tour. And so the building had a beautiful gate, and on top of that was written in bold letters, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And so Srila Prabhupada, he stands over there and he looks at the magnificent gates. And Rameshwar Prabhu is thinking Srila Prabhupada will be very pleased, but Srila Prabhupada is looking sort of disgusted, very unhappy. And so Rameshwar Prabhu is wondering why. The gate is beautiful, everything is wonderful. What's the problem? And Srila Prabhupada looked at him and said, "Where is founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada?" So this is not some self-egoism. But Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to maintain the society that he started under the instruction of his spiritual master. And of course, it is the moment of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wants this society to continue for the next 10,000 years. And that is the reason he was so emphatic about that point. And so therefore, that emphasis needs to continue. That emphasis needs to continue. And that is the meaning of not surpassing the immediate Acharya. And so the instructions of Srila Prabhupada for various aspects of devotional service, all of them need to be very strictly followed to maintain Srila Prabhupada's position. And that is what will help us progress in our devotional service. All right? Any questions on that? So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is writing here, one should not deviate from or surpass the instructions of the spiritual master. One should not be simply intent on consulting books, but should simultaneously execute the spiritual master's order. We already discussed this point yesterday. Why? Yes, association. And what will that association lead to? Yes, realized knowledge. So by simply reading the books or consulting the books, one will only get theoretical knowledge. But then when one follows the instructions, then the theoretical knowledge will become realized knowledge. And therefore, yathopadesham. Mystic power should be achieved to enable one to give up the material conception. But when one actually engages in devotional service, one does not need to practice the mystic yoga system. The point is that one can give up the practice of yoga, but devotional service cannot be given up. And then he's quoting Atmaramascha Munyo. Even those who are liberated Atmaram must always engage in devotional service. One may give up the practice of yoga when one is self-realized, but at no stage can one give up devotional service. All other activities for self-realization, including yoga and philosophical speculation, may be given up, but devotional service must be retained at all times. Okay? And you can see how Srila Prabhupada's purport to this verse is so much in line with Vishwanath Thakur's commentary. This is how Srila Prabhupada, he took the same words of the previous acharyas, but he put it in his own words, with his own added realizations, making it applicable for the current situation, for the current devotees, for the current people, That is what Srila Prabhupada has done. So I'll just read Vishwanath Thakur's commentary on this verse. One should then give up the practice by which one destroys the subtle body. Okay, and Prabhupada, that same point Prabhupada is elaborating, the neti process, the speculative process, that's what one needs to give up. One should destroy the subtle body in which the karmas lie, karma ashriyam, by yoga, according to the teachings of Guru, not going beyond that. Not by one's own learning, or by reading books alone, or by one's own observations. You see the same points. Then one should give up the method in order to destroy the subtle body, but not the method for realizing the Lord. One should practice bhakti in order to gain knowledge of the Lord. And then he's also quoting the same verses which Srila Prabhupada quoted, Brahmbhuta prasannatma na shochati kakshati. And the Atma Rama verse also, that also is quoting. So you can see the same commentary of Vishwanath Thakur, Srila Prabhupada has little bit more elaborated and explained so that it becomes easier for us to understand. This is the beauty of what Srila Prabhupada has done. So in this way, one can come to the liberated platform, or ultimately one can come to the prema stage by the practice of devotional service. So this is what Lord Rishabhdev has explained very beautifully. So Lord Rishabhdev, first of all, he established the importance of the human form of life, and in the human form of life, one needs to practice tapasya. And then he is beginning to discuss how to practice that tapasya. So the one needs to practice that tapasya by, yes, mat sevam dwara mahur vimuktes, by service to the great souls, and by not associating with, yes, the non-devotees, yoshitam and all those things. And then he has described how if one associates with the materialistic people, then one will perform vikarma. Nunam pramatta vikarma yad indre priti apranoti. So that he has said. Then the next, so from vikarma, then the next point is pious activities. So one may think that, okay, I'll give up vikarma, but one can perform pious activities. Then he established that both are useless because it will lead to bondage. Then he came to the stage of jnana. Yes, those are vipashyita, the wise people. Then they practice jnana, bhakti mishra jnana, the process of jnana. But then he said that is also not useful because, yes, one is Aravi Krishnanam, but what he said? What will remain? Yes, the granthi, especially the granthi of sex life. Okay. And then he spoke that verse, what? Pumsa sriyamituni bhavametam. So that he spoke. And so therefore, ultimately, one has to come to the practice of devotional service, bhakti. And how to practice bhakti, that he has described in 10 to 13 verses. And then finally has concluded, by that practice, then one can actually give up the subtle body, the false ego, and thus one can be totally liberated from all this material contamination. That's how he has described all these various stages, beginning from sinful life to pious life, then the practice of jnana and yoga and bhakti. So in one sense, the entire yoga ladder he has covered in these teachings. So now one comes to the platform of bhakti, then what one should do? No, by accepting spiritual master, one comes to the level of bhakti. Then what one should do? Then one should preach to others, then teach others. Correct? Teach others, guide others. That is what he is describing in the next 15, 16, 17, 18. 4 verses. 4 verses, this is what he is describing. Now, after coming to bhakti, then give others bhakti. That is what one should do. Okay, 15th verse. Putram shashishyam shanripo gururva malloka kamo madanugrahartah ittam vimanyur anushishya datajgyan na yojayet karma sukarma mudhan kam yojayan manujartham labeta nipatayan nashtadrisham higarte. Read.
Translation. If one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Samanbonam, and chief aim of life. If he is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions, even if his disciples, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should always avoid fruitive activity. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in.
Yes. So therefore, so here he is explaining that so if one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, this phrase actually is Srila Prabhupada's phrase. You will never find it in any of the Acharya's writings. This back home, back to Godheads. So the Sanskrit simply says mat loka kamaha. Mat loka kama, desiring to go to my abode, which Srila Prabhupada translates as going back home, back to Godheads. So Srila Prabhupada wants that aim or the goal to be very clear. And also, Srila Prabhupada wants to make the point that what is our original home? So therefore, going back home, back to Godheads. So in any case, so if one is serious about that, mat loka kama, mat anugraha artha, thinking that to achieve my mercy is the aim of life. So if one wants to go back to the abode of the Lord, and if one wants to attract the mercy of the Lord, for both the purposes, which are very much related, what one must do? One must perform one's duty. So, putrancha shishyamscha nripo gurorva. So if he is a father instructing his sons, spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens. Many times Srila Prabhupada in the translation itself, he gives a little more explanation than what the verse actually talks about. So this is duty. So if one wants to be successful, one has to perform one's duty. And so for the father, the spiritual master, the king, one of the important duties is to give instructions to the subordinates. He must instruct them. What instruction they must give? The same instructions that the Supreme Lord has given, as I have advised. So the same instructions which Rishabhadeva has given, the same instructions these responsible people should give. But sometimes the subordinates may not follow. So when the subordinates don't follow, then what is the tendency of the superior giving instruction? Becoming angry and becoming frustrated. Arey, ye to sunta hai nahi, chhod do bhai, kya hai? And that tendency is there, correct? But what he is saying? Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions, even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Important point. And this is essential if one wants to attract the mercy of the Lord and go back home, back to Godhead. The important principle is the principle of performing duty. And this is the principle which even Krishna has emphasized throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Perform duty without attachment to fruits. Perform duty without attachment to fruits. That is the instruction which Krishna has emphasized right from the 2nd chapter to the 18th chapter. Krishna has continuously repeated this instruction in various ways. Beginning from, yes, karmanyevadhikaraste And you can go right up to 18th chapter, you will find the same instruction is repeated. Perform your duty without attachment to the result. And the same instruction, the same Supreme Lord, another avatar of the same Supreme Lord, Rishabdev, he is also giving the same instruction. Because if one is attached to the result, then one will give up. Nahi sun raha hai, chhod do. That means one is attached to the subordinate following the instruction. But no, everyone needs to be attached to performing duty. Again, the best example for this is Srila Prabhupada himself. After Srila Prabhupada started the movement and devotees came, Srila Prabhupada initiated them, was everyone able to continue? Right from the beginning days. Srila Prabhupada started the movement in 1966. I don't remember exactly when the first devotee left, but we find almost from, say, at least 1968, there were some devotees who started to leave. Yes. Yes, there was one, Ranchod Prabhu. Yes, I think he was one of the first ones to leave. Yes. You know exactly when that happened? Yes, mostly like that. Yes. So, and then later on we see Srila Prabhupada gave sannyas to so many devotees. And sannyasis gave up sannyas. That's even more serious. Harishori Prabhu describes in his Transcendental Diary this happened in 1976, I suppose, yes. 1976 or 75, anyway, sometime during that time, 75, 76. One of the very prominent leaders, very, very powerful, very, very wonderful Kirtanier. In fact, Srila Prabhupada called him one of the kings of Kirtan, and extremely empowered preacher, Madhudvish Swami. He was preaching in Australia that time. You can see him in the videos in Australia. You can see him with Srila Prabhupada. So he was very powerful. And then due to the usual problems with the opposite sex, and so he left. And he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada received the letter. Harishori Prabhu read it out to Srila Prabhupada. And as Harishori Prabhu read the letter to Srila Prabhupada was definitely disappointed. That's one of his very powerful leaders, sannyasi leaders, has left, given up sannyas. So Srila Prabhupada was definitely disappointed. But the only comment which Srila Prabhupada made at that time was, "What can I do? I am simply dealing with 10th class men." That was the comment which Srila Prabhupada made. And that was the only comment. That's all. Did Srila Prabhupada give up his preaching? Did Srila Prabhupada stop giving sannyas? No, he didn't. Srila Prabhupada continued giving his instructions. He never stopped. And of course, even to Madhudvish Swami, who got married, and again this has been described. So Madhudvish, then he became Madhudvish Prabhu. Then Srila Prabhupada told him to come and visit him at Vrindavan. He comes alone to visit Srila Prabhupada at Vrindavan, and definitely he is very afraid that Srila Prabhupada might chastise him or whatever. And he enters Srila Prabhupada's room, he offers obeisances, And as soon as he sits up, much to his relief, the first question Srila Prabhupada asked was, "Where is your wife?" That was the first question Srila Prabhupada asked. So he felt relieved that Srila Prabhupada didn't chastise him for giving up sannyas. So Srila Prabhupada made him feel very comfortable and simply encouraged him in his practice of devotional service. That's all. Because if one gives up devotional service itself, where is the hope? There's no hope. So Srila Prabhupada simply encouraged him, continue practicing devotional service. So the point is that that's how Srila Prabhupada never gave up giving instructions. He never gave up performing his duty, continued his duty. Right from day one, as we were discussing yesterday also. Nobody came for the program, didn't make any difference. He did kirtan alone for 2.5 hours. No difference. And Mukunda Maharaj writes in his book, this Miracle on the Second Avenue. So, so this was again, yes, 1966 in New York. No, this was in San Francisco. This was in San Francisco. So, so San Francisco, this is 67, early 67. And so once Mukund Maharaj and those devotees that arranged a program in one psychedelic shop. You know, this is the hippie shop selling hippie paraphernalia. All sorts of funny things. So, so there was this shop, and behind the shop there was a small hall. So they arranged a program in that hall behind the shop on a Saturday night. So the Saturday night is the, what's the right word? Anyway, the enjoyment time for the hippies. So all the hippies were on the streets wearing all weird type of clothes and whatnot. Very funny scene and very weird scene and all sorts of funny things going on. Everything was happening on the streets. And Mukund Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada, they are walking down from the apartment to that shop. And Srila Prabhupada is seeing this whole scene, something which is never seen before. And Srila Prabhupada is walking, and Mukund Maharaj is feeling very uncomfortable, you know, Prabhupada walking through all this funny people and all these crazy people. And so Prabhupada is silent and Mukund Maharaj is also silent. Both are walking silently. And Mukund Maharaj is feeling a little uncomfortable, you know, that silence. He's feeling a little uncomfortable. So he thought he should speak something. So, so he asked Srila Prabhupada, so Swamiji, what do you think about this atmosphere here? And Srila Prabhupada smiles and says, it's all very beautiful. Of course, maybe that time he didn't understand so much, but when Maharaj is writing the book, which is many years later, so he gives a purport there. So he says, so even though Srila Prabhupada is seeing all these people and all these funny things, Srila Prabhupada is seeing all of them as parts and parcels of Krishna. So therefore they're all beautiful. So that is Prabhupada's vision. So Prabhupada goes, he has no problems. So he's walking through all those crowds of funny people. And then he comes to that small hall behind the shop. And there some few people have come. And then he describes the scene in that hall. So in that hall, so there are some people behind, some boys behind, they're smoking. There are some people lying down. And some people are sitting in some sort of meditation. So that was the situation in that hall with those few people sitting. So totally disinterested people, even though they were present, all disinterested people. Somehow they have been called or something, and they have come here, they have come there, and they're all doing their own things practically. And Srila Prabhupada walks in, and he sits on the chair or asana or whatever was there. And Srila Prabhupada, he gives his lecture for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. He gives his lecture, basic lecture about body, soul, and all that. And Srila Prabhupada just speaks the whole lecture. It made no difference to him. Made no difference to him. Even though all these people were sitting in all funny poses and doing funny things, it made no difference to Srila Prabhupada. He just gave his lecture, finished, went away. So, why? Duty. It is my spiritual master's instruction to preach, so I'll preach. That's all. So that was, that is the point that is being mentioned. So not that, oh, what is this? These people are not interested. How can I speak? Why should I give instructions? No. It is my duty to give instructions. I will give instructions. Some will listen, some will not listen, some will partially listen, or whatever it may be. My duty is to give instructions. I will do my duty. So the duty of the superior person is to give instruction. The duty of the subordinate is to follow those instructions. Ultimately, everyone needs to follow their respective duties. That is dharma. Correct? So therefore, Srila Prabhupada has translated dharma as what? Yes, in many places Prabhupada translates dharma as occupational duties. So whatever is one's duty, without being attached to the results, one has to perform those duties. And that is what Lord Rishabhdev is also telling. So one needs to perform those duties without getting angry. Of course, one may get a little angry also, but still, one should not give up the duty. Yes, bro. Give the mic to him. Okay, the divorce pastime, we know the divorce pastime. So, Prabhupada. But then the divorce pastime shows what actually?
So Prabhupada told them to get divorced because he knew that they were not going to follow this thing. So he told that.
So that means he facilitated them to follow his instruction. That is the reason why he did that. He did not want to allow them to commit the offense of Guru Avagya. Otherwise, that would be disastrous consequence. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada gave an instruction in such a way that they would be able to follow. Correct? He didn't give up the instruction. He gave an instruction and facilitated their devotional service. That's his causeless mercy. And that is what we have seen. We have seen senior devotees, spiritual masters do this. So when they understand that the disciple will not be able to follow a certain instruction, they give an instruction according to his level and facilitate the disciple to follow the instruction. That is the mercy of the Guru. So, but in any case, he did not give up giving instruction, isn't it? He gave an instruction which was appropriate for them. So, yes, that's how Srila Prabhupada acted. So the important point which Lord Rishabhdev is focusing in these verses is the point of performing one's prescribed duty. That is what is important. And that is what we need to follow. Whatever be one's duty, one needs to continue to follow that. So if one is having the duty to give instructions, then one should continue to give instructions. And then he says, ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should always avoid fruitive activity. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activities disciple, son or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. Here comes another important point, and that is one should continue to give the instructions without compromise. Without compromise. Not that one gives instructions which will facilitate the disciple or the subordinate to once again become contaminated by karma or gyan. No. This is a very similar instruction which Narad Muni also gives Vyasadeva. So there also, I don't know if I'll be able to find that quickly. But this comes in the first canto, 5th chapter. Very similar instruction which Narad Muni gives. Let me see if I can find it. No. Further. After this. Yes. So this is 1533. So Narad Muni is saying to Vyasadeva, Amayo yasya bhutanam jayate yena suvrata tadeva hi amayam dravyam na punati chikitsitam. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Yes, so the example of the milk and the curd, yes. So Prabhupada writes, an expert physician treats his patient with a therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparation sometimes causes disorder of the bowels, but the very same milk converted into yogurt and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Such activities have to be spiritualized, just as by fire, iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. The best way to make the best use of a bad bargain is to use everything in relation with the Supreme Spiritual Being. Everything is an emanation from the Supreme Spirit, and by his inconcealed power, he can convert spirit into matter and matter into spirit. Therefore, a material thing, so called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. The necessary condition for such a change is to employ so called matter in the service of the spirit. That is the way to treat our material disease and elevate ourselves to the spiritual plane where there is no misery, no lamentation, and no fear. When everything is thus employed in the service of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. The Vedic mantra that everything is Brahman is thus realized. Sarvam Kalu Idam Brahma. Thus, the next verse, thus when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. So, the same activities, when they are done for the service of the Lord, initially those activities were the cause of bondage, but when the same activities are used in the service of the Lord, then the same activities become the cause for liberation. Yes. So here, the point is that so if one puts into bondage of karmic activity his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? So the point is that if the superior does not give the appropriate instructions to the subordinate and allows the subordinate to go into bondage, then what is the use? It is just like blind man leading another blind man and allowing him to fall in the ditch. And same thing Narad Muni is saying. So Narad Muni is also saying that the duty of the physician is to treat the patient by appropriate diets. And so therefore, the same activities which are the cause of bondage, the subordinate has to be taught how those activities can be spiritualized. Then when those activities are spiritualized, they will become the cause for liberation. Huh? So all our activities are like that only, na? Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad juhoshi, dadasi yat tapasyasi. So all those activities. So all the activities that we are doing for the service of the Lord, then they become the cause of liberation. They become spiritualized, as Prabhupada is giving the example of the iron rod put in fire. It becomes like fire. So therefore, the important point here is that one should not give instructions which will lead to bondage. One should give instructions which will help the subordinate to go on the path of liberation. And therefore, the Acharyas are quoting from Vishwanath Thakur quotes, and Srila Prabhupada quotes the same verse, 326 from Bhagavad Gita. Na buddhi bedam janayet agyanam karma sanginam joshet sarva karmani vidwan yukta samacharan. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are not attached to fruitive action. They should be encouraged not to refrain from work, but to work in the spirit of devotion. So if there's some ignorant person who is attached to fruitive action, so one can give instruction by saying, okay, you're attached to your results, you're attached to fruitive action, give up the work itself. Is it a proper instruction? Why? Why it is not proper instruction? Yes, it is not possible for him to give up work. It requires some adhikar, right, to give up work. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what? Nahi kasyat shanamapi jatu tishtatya karmakrit karyate hi avashya karma sarva prakriti jair gunai. One cannot give up work because by the modes of material nature, one is forced to work. So if somebody is attached to the fruits of his action and we give him an instruction, okay, you're attached to fruits, give up work itself. The Rajogun is pushing him and you tell him not to work. What he'll do? Right. He will say, this fellow is giving useless instruction. So therefore, that is not the solution. The solution is engage him in work and teach him how to dovetail the work in Krishna's service. That is what even Krishna is telling. They should be encouraged not to refrain from work, but to work in the spirit of devotion. Okay. So the right instructions need to be given so that ultimately the subordinate is elevated and not put into bondage. So the point is one should give instructions and also one should give the right instructions so that the subordinate will be elevated and not simply put into bondage. So therefore, one needs to give instructions without compromise. Not that we say, at least the goal should be very clear. The goal should be very clear. Though instructions could be given according to the adhikar, according to time, place, circumstances, all that is possible, but at the same time, there cannot be compromise as far as the goal is concerned. That goal needs to be made very clear. So therefore, we find that right from the initial days, we find that Srila Prabhupada made no compromise. So though he was very kind, very compassionate, he allowed people to grow and he did all that, but at the same time, there was no compromise as far as what they are supposed to achieve. As far as that is concerned, there was no compromise, right from the first day. So that is what even Lord Rishabdev is telling here. Okay, 16. Loka swayam shreyasi nashta drishtir yo arthan samiheta nikama kamaha anyonya vera shukalesha hetor ananta dukkam chanaveda mudaha. Pardon?
His plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to his mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about it.
Okay, so this is the here Lord Rishabdev is speaking about the materialistic people in common. Loka swayam shreyasi nashta drishti. Nashta drishti. They have lost their vision and they do not know their shreyas. They do not know what is actually beneficial for them. And so, because they do not know what is beneficial for them, so he simply becomes nikama kama. He is simply engaged in lusty desires for sense enjoyment, and anyonya vaira. When there's sense enjoyment, then obviously there's envy. And sukha lesha heto. So he performs all this sense gratification for what? Sukha lesha. For a little drop of happiness. Along with ananta dukkham. Sukha is lesha and dukkha is how much? Ananta. That is what he is going to get. But still he does not understand all this. Na veda mudha. So that is the situation of people in general who are nashta drishti. As Prabhupada writes, the word nashta drishti, meaning one who has no eyes to see the future, is very significant in this verse. Life goes on from one body to another, and the activities performed in this life are enjoyed or suffered in the next life, if not later in this life. But yet they cannot understand, and because they are engaged in such activities, they cannot understand the Supreme Lord. Nam prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. So, and then the next paragraph, in the Kata Upanishad is also said, Avidyayam antare vartamana swayam dhira panditam manyamana. Although ignorant, people still go to other blind men for leadership. As a result, both are subjected to miserable conditions. The blind lead the blind into the ditch. So that is what Lord Rishabdev is saying. One should not become leader like this. One should not become a leader or a superior who takes his subordinate and throws him in the ditch. That is what one should not do. These poor people are nashta drishti, they don't have vision. One must give proper vision. 17. Kastam swayam tadavigno vipashyat avidyayam antare vartamanam drishtva punastam sagrina kubuddhim prayojayet utpatagam yathandam.
If someone is ignorant and addicted to the path of samsara, how can one who is actually learned, merciful, and advanced in spiritual knowledge, engage him in fruitive activity, and thus further entangle him in material existence. If a blind man is walking down the wrong path, how can a gentleman allow him to continue on his way to danger? How can he approve this method? No wise or kind man can allow this.
Yes. So Rishabdev is saying that so if somebody is in this condition, he is ignorant, he is addicted to the path of sense enjoyment, then any vipaschit, any learned person, he will try to help him, right? He will not allow the person to simply go on the wrong path. So just like the blind man is going on the wrong path, how can an intelligent person allow him to continue to go on the wrong path? Right? So therefore, one needs to perform one's duty of giving such foolish people the proper knowledge and not allow them to simply continue on the wrong paths. So therefore, coming to the important verse, the 18th verse, Guru na sasyat swajano na sasyat Pita na sasyat janani na sasyat Devam na tatsyan na patisya sasyan Namo chayedya samupeta mrityum.
One who cannot deliver his descendants from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod.
Yes, so again, so in all these 4 verses, Lord Rishabdev is speaking the same point, that one who is in a responsible position should perform the responsibility properly. And the main responsibility of the superior person is to deliver the subordinate from the cycle of birth and death. That is the main responsibility. And not allow him to become bound by the path of fruitive action. Take him out of the path of fruitive action, which is the cause of entanglement, and put him on the path of liberation. That is the duty of one who is in the superior position, one who is in knowledge, vipaschit. He's supposed to do that. So now, and so he's saying if one does not do that, then he has no right to accept the responsible position. So, along with responsibility, also come rights, correct? There are rights and responsibilities. Just like one is, again, Srila Prabhupada's famous example, just like if one gets a responsible post like a high court judge, along with that what he gets? Yes, he gets facilities. He may get a house, he may get a car with a driver and some servants, he gets all that. Why does he get those facilities? Because he has accepted responsibility. So if he says, okay, I will enjoy the house and the car, I will not go to the court. Anyway, I've already got nice house they have given, everything. आराम से बैठ जाऊंगा. अरे क्या है? What will happen? Yes, the facility will be taken away. So similarly, anyone who's in a responsible position, like a spiritual master or a parent or a king, what facilities he gets from the subordinates? Yes, he gets respect. What else? What else? Yes, the subordinates may give facilities, service, so many things the subordinates may give. Correct? But because he gets those things from subordinates, those are his rights. But when he gets those things, what he should do? Yes, he should be responsibly doing his service. And that's what Rishabdev is saying. If he does not do the service responsibly and simply takes the facilities, then the facilities will be taken away and he will be implicated in irresponsible behavior. So now, without seeing the purport, if you can give examples for each one of these. I don't know, maybe you've already seen the purport. Bad. This verse is saying about if one does not perform the responsibility, then he has no right. So, the guru who did not perform the duty and, yeah, Shukracharya. Then the next is Swajana, relative. Any example? Okay, Vibhishan gave up Ravana. Yes, so okay, we can take that. So he gave up his brother because, yes, the elder brother, he was elder, right? Yes, Bharat Maharaj giving up, that is mother, no? Mother is coming, Janani. Yes. Okay, so that for Janani mother, that is the example. Bharat Maharaj giving up his mother. Huh? Yes, Prahlad Maharaj giving up his father Hiranyakashipu, that is for father. Okay, so Swajana ho gaya, Pita ho gaya, Janani, Daivam, worshipable deity. Pradhani. Pati? Yes, the Brahman Patni is giving up their husbands, yes. Okay, now let's read the purport. Prabhupada actually gives examples for each one of them. So, there are many spiritual masters, but Rishabdev advises that one should not become a spiritual master if he is unable to save his disciple from the path of birth and death. Unless one is a pure devotee of Krishna, he cannot save himself from the path of repeated birth and death. Okay, he cannot save himself, then how he can save others? So first of all, he has to become pure devotee. One can stop birth and death only by returning back to Godhead. However, who can go back to Godhead unless he understands the Supreme Lord in truth? Janma Karma Chamirti. We have many instances in history illustrating Rishabdev's instructions. Shukracharya was rejected by Bali Maharaj due to his inability to save Bali Maharaj. And then he is a little bit explaining that. And similarly, further down, Prabhupada is explaining, wives of Brahmanas, they gave up. This is an example of wife rejecting husband. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj rejected his father and Bharat Maharaj rejected his mother. The word Daivam indicates a demigod or one who accepts worship from a dependent. And Prabhupada doesn't give any separate example for that. Ordinarily, the spiritual master, husband, father, mother, or superior relative accepts worship from an inferior relative. But here Rishabdev forbids this. First, the father, spiritual master, or husband must be able to release the dependent from repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Reproachment means punishment. If he doesn't do the duty, then he is going to get punished for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be very responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciple or a father takes charge of his son. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. So already we have studied this in the 4th canto. Lord Vishnu himself tells Prithu Maharaj. So if the king, he does not perform his duty properly and he does not give protection to the citizens, then what happens? Yes, then he has to suffer 1/6 of the sinful reactions of the citizens, correct? Lord Vishnu told him. He has to suffer. And if he performs his duties properly to give protection to the citizens, then what happens? Yes, then he gets 1/6 of the pious activities of the citizens. You see, everything is very precise and everything is there in the Shastra. So one cannot think that I will simply enjoy facilities and I won't do my responsibility. Reaction is there for everything. So in that purport in the 4th canto, Srila Prabhupada writes, similarly, just like the king, so just like the king, he has to face reactions for not performing his duties. By performing his duties, he gets benefit. The same principle applies to parents and spiritual master. The same principle applies. So one cannot say that, well, I will simply enjoy all the facilities, all the respect. Prabhupada is writing here, all the worship one gets from the dependent, and I will not do my duty. No. One will have to face reproachment. One will have to face the reaction for that. There's going to be punishment. So all these are laws one cannot escape. So the principle is, but at the same time, we find that, okay, even in Srila Prabhupada's case, there were disciples who disobeyed, correct? There were disciples who disobeyed. Yes, they left also. So is Srila Prabhupada responsible for that? Correct. Everyone needs to perform their respective duties. So the spiritual master has to do his duty of properly instructing the subordinates. The subordinates have to perform their duty of following the instructions. So if the superior has done his part, the subordinate has got his free will. And who interferes with the free will of the jiva? Even Krishna does not do that. So the free will is always present with the subordinate. So everyone has to perform their respective duties. That is the principle that Lord Rishabhdev is telling over here. So if the superior is giving proper instructions, regular instructions, and guiding the subordinates, but still if the subordinate misuses free will, what can be done? Then he has to face the consequences. But if the superior is not even giving instructions, not even giving guidance, he is not doing his duty, and then the subordinate misbehaves, then the superior also will be responsible for the misbehavior of the subordinates. So that is what Rishabhdev is doing. Yes, bro.
So that is in which category? Like spiritual masters?
Okay. So the best answer to this question is you open 995. So the question is that he's asking that sometimes we find that when the disciples commit sinful activities, then the guru has to suffer for the sinful activities of disciples, correct? So that's what he's asking. So then the disciple is committing sinful activities, then why should the guru suffer? That is the question. Okay? So somebody has opened 995. Please read. So this is, the context is, this is Ganga. So Ganga Devi, she is praying to the Supreme Lord that so many people will come and dump their sinful reactions. Okay.
For there the people in general will bathe in my water to cleanse themselves of reactions of their sinful deeds. When all this sinful reaction accumulate in me, how shall I become free from them? You must consider this very carefully.
Purport.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Sadharman paritteja mamekam sharanam vajaham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshashami masacha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me, I shall deliver you from all sinful action. Do not fear. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can accept the reaction of anyone's sinful deeds and neutralize them because he is pavitra, pure, like the sun, which is never contaminated by any worldly infection. Tejyasam na doshaya vahane sarva bhuja yatha. One who is very powerful is not affected by any sinful activity. But here we see that Mother Ganges fears being burdened with the sins of people in general who bathe in her waters. This indicates that no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to neutralize the reaction of sinful deeds, whether one's own or those of others. Sometimes the spiritual master, after accepting a disciple, must take charge of that disciple past sinful activities, and being overloaded must sometimes suffer, if not fully then partially. For the
so
sinful,
please note that point. When he is, what is the word? Overloaded. The word used there is overloaded. Read that sentence again.
Sometimes the spiritual master,
Sometimes, not always. Sometimes.
after accepting a disciple, must take charge of that disciple's past sinful activities, and being overloaded, must sometimes suffer. If not fully, then partially, for the sinful acts of the disciple. Every disciple, therefore, must be very careful not to commit sinful activities after initiation. The poor spiritual master is kind and merciful enough to accept a disciple and partially suffer for that disciple's sinful activities. But Krishna, being merciful to his servant, neutralized the reaction of sinful deeds for the servant who engages in preaching his glories. Even Mother Ganges feared the sinful reaction of the people in general and was anxious about how she would counteract the burden of these sins.
Right. You got the answer? So basically what Srila Prabhupada is explaining here is that it is not that always the spiritual master will suffer for the sinful reactions of the disciple. Therefore Prabhupada has used the word sometimes, twice, sometimes. It's not always. And the other important word is overloaded. That means too many disciples are committing too many sinful activities. Then it becomes overload. So then the Supreme Lord, if he wants, he can neutralize, correct? For him, there's no problem. The Lord can neutralize all the sinful reactions. But the Lord also wants to give an indication to the disciples and to the spiritual master. So therefore, to give an indication that this is what is happening. So therefore, the Lord, he wants to alert both the disciples and the spiritual master. Therefore, sometimes the spiritual master may suffer. Of course, for the spiritual master who is actually advanced, that is not a major impediment in his devotional service, but at the same time it gives an indication to him that the disciples are committing sinful activities, and he gives a warning to them, as Srila Prabhupada did. Correct? So Srila Prabhupada, when he became sick towards his final days, then Srila Prabhupada openly said that the reason I've fallen sick is because too many disciples are committing sinful activities. So then all the disciples became alert. That is the reason why the Lord sometimes does this. Otherwise, further down the purport, Prabhupada says, otherwise, normally, for the spiritual master who is actively engaged in preaching, the Lord neutralizes all sinful reactions of the disciples. That is what normal. But sometimes he does this. Yes, that is there, but that's her fear. That's her fear which is expressing.
This line, everyone should be very responsible and take charge of dependents, just as spiritual master takes charge. So just on clarification. So spiritual master taking the karma of the disciple that is there. Now it seems from this line that apart from the spiritual master, the responsibility lies on the people who are recommending the people for the initiation also.
This is quite an extrapolation. How are you extrapolating this from that statement?
Means everyone should be very responsible. So what does it mean exactly?
So he is referring to the other people who should be responsible, like the husband and the father and the mother, so all these people. He is referring to all those other people. But in any case, your point is also correct. Right, so in the present day situation, definitely we find that many times the spiritual master does not even know the people he is initiating, the Diksha Guru, or he may have just a very slight interaction. Most of the knowledge about the people being sent for initiation is by the preachers, right? The preachers, the senior devotees who are recommending. So therefore, definitely, they also need to be careful. That is correct. They also need to be careful because the spiritual master is putting faith on them. Correct? The spiritual master is putting faith on them that these people are recommending qualified people. So if they misuse their you can say, the faith that has been imposed on them. So if one misuses that and recommends unqualified people for the sake of name and fame, they will have to share some reaction. They will have to share. See, the principle in this world is nobody escapes. That is the principle. One cannot do nonsense and think I will escape. It just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work. Whoever it is. So one has to perform one's duty properly. That principle always applies. ठीक है ना? Yes, bro. वो पीछे दे दो.
But now many of us are acting as counselors, mentors, taking care of youths, guiding them. So spiritual master is very mature in Shastra, in his practice, and he takes the karma. And at our level, we no, our boys are not directly connected to our spiritual master. We are like many spiritual masters for them. Initial level. So when we unable to fulfill responsibility, maybe by two reasons: I am not mature, I have not understood my responsibility by taking the seva, or I am unable to do my, I am careless in my performing seva. So in that case, do we also get karma if the jiva?
So if I am unable to do a service properly, what should I do?
Learn, train.
Learn, yes, that's the point. So one has been given a service, one does not know how to do the service, then get guidance. Get guidance from superiors and find out how to do the service properly.
If one understands he need learning, he will go for it. But somebody who don't understand only and continue.
Oh, that is ignorance. That is ignorance. Ignorance of law is no excuse.
Till the time he will also get the reaction or.
So therefore, see, if I don't understand that I am wrong, then that means I don't have the understanding of what is right and what is wrong. Correct? If I know what is right, what is wrong, when I do something wrong, I'll understand it. Correct? So this is absolute ignorance. That I don't even understand what is right and what is wrong. So, see, first of all, service, authority, responsibility must be given to a qualified person. Correct. At least some basic level of qualification and training must be there for a person to do some service. So first of all, service must be given to such qualified people, not that any Tom, Dick and Harry. So, but it's natural that everyone is not perfect right in the beginning. There could be some imperfections. So if there are some imperfections, some difficulties, well, there are always senior devotees to consult. So one should consult and find out what is the right way to do things and then do accordingly. So not that, okay, I don't know something, so I do things in the wrong way. No, how is that justified? I've been given a particular service, I don't know how to do it properly, then one should find out from some other devotees how to do it. At the same time, if one feels oneself totally unqualified and incapable, then better accept the fact that I'm incapable of doing and let somebody else do it. But there is no excuse for irresponsibility. There is no excuse. So if one does things irresponsibly, then some reaction has to be there. Therefore, Prabhupada is making that point. Quite a heavy statement Prabhupada is making here. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. So, reactions will be there. If one does not do one's duty properly, there will be some reaction. So, one should, therefore, first of all, the human life itself, Prabhupada has written right in the first sentence of the purport to the third mantra of the Ishopanishad. Human life is distinguished from animal life by heavy responsibilities. So that's the basic difference between human life and animal life, responsibility. And within that If one has been given a responsible position, then even more responsibility. So one cannot take all these things lightly. So whatever responsibility has been given, one should try to execute it to the best of one's ability. And no one is born perfect. No problem. One can always learn, take guidance, be trained. See? Hare Krishna. Anything else on this verse? Madhusundar Prabhu, you want to ask something? Okay, so this is the end of one section. And from the next section, from 19 to 27, then Lord Rishabdev, he gives more specific instructions to his sons, how they must follow the eldest son, that is Bharat Maharaj, and why to follow Bharat Maharaj. That is what he discusses from 19 to 27. That is those instructions. So the instructions of Rishabdev from first verse to 27th verse. This is Lord Rishabdev's instructions. And so the last part we will discuss tomorrow. And the rest of the chapter is how Lord Rishabdev, he takes the Avadut Vesh and then all that. So that we will do. So the rest of the chapter will finish tomorrow. And the 6th chapter again is a small chapter. So that we will do on Monday. Okay? Yes, bro. Give that mic. Oh, samne. Mr. Lust, what happened to him?
Prabhuji. So, Prabhupada told that the solution to lust is not associating with the opposite sex. Like
marriage is not the
marriage is
solution.
not the solution. So I was just thinking that many times when devotees are not able to gel in the ashram, they feel like they have some lust issue, then we say that get married. So then what should be our approach? Somebody is telling that I have a lust problem and it's difficult for me to.
Recently, when devotee shared that at least I have an ashram, I have association of brahmacharis and stay away from. So I was in better situation. After getting married, he was sharing his realization.
After getting married.
Yeah. And now I am out, and it's become so difficult to handle this lust. I am with wife, I am whole world, and in Bombay. So he was sharing this.
That's obvious. Now see, at least here the objects of sense gratification are not there. Correct? Now, when the object is there right in front of you, and then we read what Prabhupada says. According to Shastric injunctions, one is supposed to enjoy only once in a month. All those restrictions are there. And so the sense object is there, and one is supposed to restrain. Then what is more difficult? No sense object and restrain, or with sense object restrain, which is more difficult? So the ultimate point is nothing is easy. That is the point. Human life is a life of tapasya. Nothing is easy. The only thing is the grass looks greener on the other side. That is the only thing. And mostly what ultimately happens is that so in the Grihastha ashram, then it's very difficult to actually follow the Shastric principles and restrain oneself as the Shastras mention. That is what will happen. So therefore, well, but if the person he thinks that that's a solution, then and he does not have that conviction to think that that is not the solution, then how is he going to learn? Then he has to learn through experience. That's the point. So the solution is not marriage. The solution for lust is not marriage. But if I tell him, he cannot understand it. He thinks the solution is to enjoy his senses. He thinks that that's the solution. But then by the Shastra telling or by someone telling, it does not work. Why? Because that level of realization is not there. Then when that level of realization is not there, and one cannot get the realization simply by hearing, then one has to get the realization through experience. That is why all the ashramas are there. Prabhupada writes this in 1st Canto, 9th chapter, Bhishma Dev section. Ultimately, everyone has to come to the platform of detachment from the material world. Some get it through hearing, some get it through experience. So those who already have some sukriti from the past or already have gone through the experience in the past and have come to a level of realization, then they are able to continue. Otherwise, one has to come to the same realization through experience. But ultimately, the solution for everyone remains the same. And the only solution is devotional service. That is the only solution. But what to do? The mind is craving for that sense enjoyment. Okay, then you enjoy. And then you come to the realization. Yes. So when one has heard so much, and then also one has practiced, then the detachment becomes easier in the Grihastha ashram. Then he will be able to give up the Grihastha ashram and enter Vanaprastha easily. Otherwise, he will continue to remain attached. That is the difference. Yes. But ultimately, the solution is to intensify one's devotional service. So better is learn by hearing the Shastras. So learn by hearing and then intensify one's devotional service and continue. That is one who's intelligent. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. So we are meeting at 11 o'clock tomorrow where? That conference hall is on the first floor, right? First floor that. Okay, near Mukund Manohar. Okay, fine. Hare Krishna. आप मार्क क्या? Okay, Hare Krishna.